Hello, welcome to Rupa's Six Questions for Authors. This is my podcast and show that is focused on getting to know authors that I know and love, and you probably know and love, and should get to know and love. It's really an introspection about what drives authors, inspires them, and maybe holds them back sometimes. I'm Roopa Unnikrishnan. By day, I'm a strategist and innovation chief innovation officer, head of M&A, as well as a consultant. But what drives me, my passion is writing. I've become a fiction writer lately. I've written business books. And I know the questions that I get asked, and hence I thought, let's turn the lens to some of the authors I know. And I'm very, very delighted today to introduce you to an author who's near and dear to my heart, a relative really, because he's my father-in-law, T.P. Sreenivasan, but more importantly, he's an extremely prolific author. He's on to his 11th book so far, and I think there's a 12th hiding in the wings right now. Ambassador T.P. Sreenivasan, can I welcome you? Thank you for being here and tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you for asking me. As you said, I've been in the Indian Foreign Service for nearly 40 years and lived and worked in different capitals of the world. And last 20 years, I've been in retirement. But the retirement has been even more active than regular professional life, because I do a lot of writing, a lot of speaking, a lot of training young people, etc., etc. Writing and diplomacy go together, because it is not that I started writing only after I retired, but in service, you're always writing. Less of action and more of conversations and writing. That's what happens. You have to keep reporting what you do to the government. And these are read by very few people, and they are stacked away in the archives of the Ministry of External Affairs. So when I finished my service, I thought that most people will not know what I did. Many people tell me, I know you are an ambassador, but what do you do? People ask me that. So just to have a short account of what I have done in different parts of the world, which would not be known to others. And that is how I started writing as soon as I left the service. And I had only thought of one book, and I knew the title of the book even when I was a student, because one sentence from Hamlet attracted me. Polonius asks Hamlet, "What do you read, my lord?" And he says, "Words, words, words." So diplomacy is all about words, spoken words, written words, reported words. So that is how this book was born. It's not always complete, but and then followed several other volumes, which filled up some of the gaps which are there in the main book. But it's been well received, and there are several diplomats who have written books. And therefore, this is something which is familiar. KPS Menon, for example, he became better known after he retired because of his lovely books he wrote.
Right.
So the material was there. Yeah, I was carrying it in my head, and it was a matter of pouring it in a style which is acceptable. That's how it happened.
So you've already talked about the first question I usually have, which I call the origin spark, but there are 5 more. I call them the process ritual, right? What is the process you use? The day job, how it works for your writing with your day job. The abandoned ideas that you may have held closely that you've not yet turned into a book, perhaps. And then what do you consider success? What I call the shelf test question. And finally, the necessary lie, the lie you might have to tell yourself, or something you hold closely that sort of keeps you motivated or maybe holds you back. So that's a tough one, right? So let's talk about that, the process ritual. Walk us through what your writing actually looks like for you on a typical day, right? Not the romanticized version, but the real one. What does the work feel like for you?
Well, I joined the service, the internet or even a proper computer was not available. So we were mostly writing or dictating to secretaries. That's how it went on. And by the time I retired, I saw the first computer in New York in 1981. And we used it only as a word processor. So this word processor idea struck me because you can make changes. You don't have to retype again and again. Because I worked in an office in the Ministry of External Affairs, in the Foreign Secretary's office, where we had about 12 or 15 secretaries, because my boss kept on correcting his versions. And one speech we wrote for our foreign minister on his first visit to Beijing, I still retain 69 versions of his speech. And each one, there's only one sentence which is common, which is, "Thank you for your hospitality." This is the prolific way in which he used to correct. And when I took it back to him in the final version, he'll ask me, "Which fool wrote this?" Which what he himself wrote. So it's a long process, it used to be. But with the advent of the word processor, this changed dramatically. And we can change things, and there would not be 49 copies of the same text. So it came as a blessing. So if I did not have a word processor, I don't know whether I would have taken the trouble of writing this all by hand. But I still write in Malayalam because it's my mother tongue. And that I do with a pen and pencil. I can't use a word processor for Malayalam. So I do both. So the idea was to bring in the relevant points of my career and highlight it and explain in a manner in which is acceptable to the reader. And I must say it has done well, because very many people are interested in this. And diplomatic biographies or autobiographies are very, very popular, because people want to know what has happened or what happens in your career. People ask me, "I know you're an ambassador, but what does an ambassador do?" Very few people do not know. So so it was a mission or an evangelism, shall we say, that led me to writing. And the process is very simple. Whenever I had the time, I would go to the word processor and type out whatever comes to my mind. And of course, it is the time takes time. You have to keep writing and correcting and checking facts. But now, of course, it's easier to write. With AI, you can check facts very easily. But when I was writing, I had to go to the library or find a book.
Right.
And then the writing will wait till then, and till I verify the facts. But now, of course, dramatically that has changed also. So maybe writing is easier now because of all these technical facilities that we have. But I went through the way of writing and correcting it several times and so on. But by the time I came to my latest book, which is on diplomacy, liberated, that means things which I can now tell the world, which I could not tell when I was in the service.
Yes.
And so it was a gradual thing of, but I have not read any fiction as yet, except I wrote a little book called Humor in Diplomacy. That's, it's not fiction, but it's
Right.
very creative.
Right.
In the sense that incidents have been dramatized and clarified and made it into a humorous thing. And so, other than that, it is basically diplomacy, geopolitics, my own experiences, life in about 14 countries and visiting 100 countries. There is so much to remember. So I can keep on writing more books, I think, if I had.
So, and I can confess to having a behind the scenes perspective, because you visit us, we visit you, and I know you're up at sometimes 4 a.m. and I'll see you writing quite often. So you're an early bird. That's when you write, correct?
Yes, because at the time when there are no telephone calls or other interruptions. So, and I used to wake up at 4 o'clock even when I was a student.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's quite easy to. Yeah.
So let me ask you about you've talked about writing as even as part of your work, but talk about the tension, because sometimes your professional life and the writing, the author, the reflective life, right, live in the same brain. What is writing given to your career, and what has your career received by the fact that you were an introspective writer even early on?
Well, even my reports used to be literary style because of my literature background. So, like for example, when I arrived in Vienna, I compared the scene in Vienna, the last act of a Shakespearean play.
Right.
The whole thing was so confusing in that mission. So I said, dead bodies lying around. It's like the fifth scene of Shakespearean tragedy, and the villain, looking from a corner. Like
Right.
that kind of situation I found in our mission
Oh my.
when I was ambassador to Vienna. So this report amused everybody in the became a bestseller, as it were. People were circulating and so on. But then the danger is when you do such things, you have to be very sensitive to your need to be very selective,
Right.
because there are several things you could not expose. Even this, I thought I had done too much of it. When I read it now, I feel that I should have written so frankly. So that is always a problem. And I don't know, in the government, even after you leave, you are bound by certain laws that you will not reveal anything which could be secret or confidential.
Right.
But I thought the best way would be to go and tell my boss, that was the foreign secretary, can I give you my draft so that you can look at it and tell me in advance? He said, what do you mean? I have nothing else to do. No such thing. You write, you publish, and if it goes wrong, we'll put you in jail. So that was his advice. so that was a constant reminder that
Right.
you need to be careful about that. And there could be something, somebody may find some of the things I wrote as not very diplomatic, or it was too revealing of the functioning of the government, etc. But
Right.
so far, I have not been put in jail. So that means I've been safe.
Well, yes, it's you do have a very sensitive past and present, I guess. All right. So let me ask you a slightly different question. It may have something to do with you having been in those difficult, diplomatically thorny situations. Is there an abandoned idea, a book that maybe you started or you've planned that you had to walk away from or put it away for a while? And also, what does that say about you and your process and you as a person that you've walked away from the idea?
Not really. All my books are completed. It is all sequential, one after the other.
Right.
There could have been something which triggered it for some reason. And otherwise, it was my own thinking. But some people would suggest, like, for example, Diplomacy Through the Prism of Mythology is one of the books I wrote. And that created curiosity, how much of mythology. But I find that our external affairs minister now uses mythology all the time. Even some of them that I mentioned in the book, who are the best diplomats in the world, whether it was Hanuman or Sri Krishna. There is a difference, because Hanuman went in search of something and he found it. But
Right.
then when he could not help the situation, she punished it there. So diplomat who goes with a nuclear weapon in his pocket.
Right.
So that means you have the facility or your ability or the potential not only to negotiate, but then when it doesn't work out, you use your weapon. And that, of course, has now become diplomacy through, through wars also are very,
Right.
very common these days.
Right.
So I didn't walk away from anything thinking that it was not appropriate. But I did, as you know, you do a lot of changes when you write. Each time you think that it can be improved. And then one at point you think, but now I cannot do anything more. And that is how you give it to the publisher. And publishers get after you, asking various questions, legal questions.
Right.
Like my latest, it is a contribution to a book written by several retired officers. So I said somewhere, called myself an accidental educationist, which I was. Because after coming here, I was appointed as chairman of the committee of vice chancellors in Kerala. So I call it, the title was accidental educationist. So the publishers wrote back, sorry, we cannot use it. There's a book called Accidental Prime Minister. There's another one, so and so on. So it's been difficult. So can you change the title? I said, there is no book called Accidental Educationist. So can't you try that? And then they consulted several lawyers, and finally they accepted it. And that also so publishers are also sometimes very sticky about such things. But two or three publishers I worked with were quite free and quite liberal in that sense. But the recent one, I'm doing a collection of this thing which I'm editing. That will be, of course, it's not my own. We have a co-editor also. So
Right.
there we find this, the publisher is becoming much more careful about using words. So that is the third stage. And
Right.
then when it comes, you see that something could have been different, but then you carry on with it.
Right. So, can I ask you a different type of question here, the shelf test question? And we live in a world where you're quite, frequently ranked, right? You get the Amazon ranking, you've got, multiple authorities that are ranking your book. But what is your internal calculus of whether a book that you've written has succeeded, right? Or fallen, and has it surprised you by doing better or falling short of your expectations? So, what is your shelf test?
No, I don't really care for that because I don't expect to become a famous writer. I was doing with a particular purpose. So I don't really look at rating, etc. But then the books are sold, you are happy, your publisher is happy, etc. So it is not trying to attain perfection. That's not how I look at it. And so each book has been created in a particular circumstance, and I did my best, and then I leave it to the readers. But most of them were sold well because of this. But when I went to first I went to an American publisher with my first book about diplomacy. So he looked at it and said, what value has it for anybody else? You are telling your experience, and that experience doesn't matter to anyone else. So he said, don't write a book of your achievements in the foreign service. Give me a book, how to be a diplomat. Then I'll publish it. Diplomacy for dummies, if I wrote. He said he was willing to accept that. So I thought of it for a while, but that was a different kind of cleaner. So I didn't do that. But I still have that in my mind. I wrote a book on Indian foreign policy, Charms and Challenges, for the sake of my students. And that has been a bestseller because everybody wants to be in the civil service.
Right.
And this from selection process to retirement and afterwards.
Right.
And that sold like hotcakes.
Right.
And that's because it is a practical guide, as it were. That was the first advice I got from an American publisher. You tell people what they can be, and that will attract them. From the old days, how to make friends and influence people.
Yeah.
And that tradition is still there. If you but your career catapult is something like that. You're telling people how to be a better business person, investor. So, and that genre of the book is likely to get more attention and more popularity, as I see.
That's right. And I think, there is a practicality to it, but sometimes you have to write what you want to write and hope for the best, right? So here's the last question. I call it the necessary lie, right? What I mean is all writers sometimes protect something deep in their soul, whether it's a belief about themselves, their process, their writing, or their readers, that probably, you haven't tested. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. What is that belief? I know this is an intentionally provocative question, but, brainstorm with me. What are some of the beliefs you have that you've left untested for now?
Yes, I have refrained from writing a book called The Women in My Life. Not written it. So that would not be. So I always think if I did that, what would happen? But I have not yet dared to do that. But other than that, there was nothing that I held back. But in diplomacy, there are certain things you do which you do not advertise or publicize. Like how I've got a particular document in a particular government office because of a friendship I had, and how it was very useful for the government of India because that revealed what is going to happen in a visit, etc. So such things, of course, I've never revealed where it was, what happened, etc. But other than that, I don't think I've held back anything when it comes to diplomacy and the things I did. In the book, of course, I've exaggerated several things. One incident blown up into something bigger to make it appear as true. But at the same time, it may not be true, but it is just as the spice to the book.
Right.
That I have done. But in serious books, I have not held back anything very much,
Yeah.
Confidential. Or, some of the things maybe some people may find it strange that I revealed it. For example, conversations with prime ministers. I had the pleasure of working with several prime ministers, and
Right.
I could write a book on those prime ministers because there was enough material. But again, I have held it back because that would be, many people may challenge it because I'm not the only one who deals with that prime minister. So everybody
Right.
has a different image. So then you may be challenged as to what you're writing is not right about one.
Right.
So these two books I have set aside, but otherwise I have been quite frank and forthright.
Interesting. The women in your life and the prime ministers in your life, very fitting that you've protected those two ideas. Um, Thank you so much. I will sort of share a little bit. I guess it's not quite a secret, but when I talk about the inspiration spark, I remember when I first joined the family, we would get almost a weekly email from you, which were, it was a vignette or it was a reflection about what was happening in the news that week. And I remember thinking, wow, this is amazing. And do you remember when I printed out all of those emails and created a little draft book for you? So that's an early memory of mine after joining the Sreenivasan
No,
household.
in fact, because of your name, they thought, no, somebody thought it was brought out by, so because of your name, somebody thought it was brought out by Roopa Books because it was Roopa Unnikrishnan on top of it. So, oh, your book has been published by. I said, yes, my God. That was interesting. But then it was very personal. It was nothing official in most of this.
Yeah.
It was really the family stories instead of writing to everyone. Now could we send out all these WhatsApp. So everybody is fully filled as to what is happening. That's very good.
Yeah.
But there could also be a book one day.
Yes, I think so.
But I would like to write fiction.
I think it's time for a
I
collaboration.
would like to do that, but I don't know how to write a novel. Absolutely. No, you done. We did not know you were doing that, so you kept it confidential. But it's good to discuss these things, so then you'll get ideas. And but since yours is a mystery novel, the mystery has to remain.
Yeah.
And that is what has attracted to many people. And it's all taken out from life of your parents, etc. But it is a magic. It's a mystery.
Yes.
So, like the princess said when she opened it, she said, "Oh my God, I did not know there were so many murders in here. I would not have agreed to release it." She said. But all these reactions are there. But it has succeeded because of the element of fiction in it, which is on the one hand realistic and on the other hand very artistic. That's how that book has succeeded.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'll probably write a novel like that, but it's very difficult to the characters.
That's right. I think I have learned how to write fiction by writing fiction because it's not as straightforward, honestly, as writing a nonfiction book. But I think it's
We
been
didn't have a model. We didn't have a model.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure. Thank you. And
Good.
please.
So, thank you very much for inviting me. First podcast on writing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And
Bye.
I will hit stop now. Thank you.